Hey everybody, this is your spiritual colorist and diamond painter coming to you once again with just a whip and chat for just a brief moment. I wanted to come to you and talk to you about a particular book that I have and a particular series that I've been watching. So I thought this would be an interesting whip and chat to do with a color and chat kind of conversation that I wanted to have with you guys because it is a series, but it's also a coloring book. And so I really have to take this out and have a conversation with my peoples to talk to them about this coloring book, but also about the series. When I bought this coloring book, I was thinking about a different series. If anybody have ever heard of the Highlander, I was thinking about that particular series, and then I bought the book and I realized it was the Outlander. Now, the Outlander is a series that is on Netflix, and it came out in 2014. So when I start watching the Outlander, this series is so good, and I got the coloring book. But the Highlander, which was a movie that came out in 1986 with Sean Connery, and then it became a series in like the 90s. Yeah, with another guy. I think it was Jim Calories. I think it's his name, but he's a very fine-looking guy who goes through time, and he's a fighter. So, but anyway, the whole story is a great story. Both stories are really good. But the Outlander that came out in 2014 is a really cool story. And I have the coloring book. And since I've been watching this story, guys, if you haven't watched it and you go to Netflix, it is so good. It goes back into World War II about a girl named Claire. Now, I don't know how many people have Netflix, but Netflix is very popular right now, and there's a lot of good shows on Netflix. I don't watch Netflix every day, but I like watching like the Great British Bake Off on their certain series. I like just watching. There's certain shows that I've just got to watch continuously. I did watch Bridgerton and watch that series. They have different movies that they have had. This is the particular picture that I had started off doing. I did start off doing the first page with Claire in it. This is Claire. This is the first page that I started doing. Her name is Claire. She's in World War II. Her husband are both in the army. She was a nurse in the army of World War II with her husband, Randall. And they were both in the army of World War II. They end up moving to, I think, what is it, Ireland, or around in Ireland. Yeah, with Jack Randall. Sorry, not that's his name. His name is Jack Randall. Her husband's name is Jack Randall, and they both move to the country of is it Ireland? Because he was in the military and intelligence of the army, and she was a nurse. So it says Frank and I lived the nomad life of a junior facility divided between the Continental Conferences of temporary flats until the outbreak of war had sent him to officers training and the intelligence unit at M16, and me to nurses training. Though we had been married nearly 8 years, the new house in Oxford would be our first real home. So after the war, they both moved, and he became a teacher at Oxford as a historian teacher. And his name is actually Frank Randall. Jack Randall is actually his ancestor. And she goes to these stones that they have there and gets transported back in time. So now she's in a different time zone than what she was, and her husband claims her as missing, and he doesn't know what happened to her. The World War II has ended, and she goes into a different part of time where there's a lot going on. It's still with the British, and the war is still taking place there. So there's still war going on. So she still is facing, the war that is going on there after she had just came out of war. So her and her husband Frank, they were already both in war, and they made their home in Scotland. That's where they were, in Scotland. And when she goes to these stones, she touches these stones, and she gets transported back in time. And there's these old stones that they just have back in Scotland that has this kind of mysterious type of, that has like this mysterious type of legendary, I guess that you want to say legendary tale to it, that people have been known to pass through those stones and things like that. And she gets actually transported back in time. So when she's transported back in time, no one knows where she is. Her husband reports her missing, and everybody's trying to tell her that she left her husband, that she left him for another man, that there's no real evidence that she was kidnapped, and that he needed to just get over it, that she left him probably for another man, and blah blah blah. And he's not going to believe it. And he tells her before she leaves that there's nothing that she could ever do to stop him for loving her. Because I think she tells him one time in the story before she goes through the stones, I think someone makes like a remark to her about, someone flirts with her. And she's like, he's like, well, is there another man? She's like, Frank, are you serious? Would you ever think I would ever do that to you? I would never, I would never cheat on you. I would never leave you for someone else. And he said, don't worry, there is nothing you could ever do that would ever make me stop loving you. And I was like, that was so deep, because that's how much love he had for her. He's like, even if you even thought about it, it's nothing in the world you could ever do to make me stop loving you. And he's like so angry because he doesn't know what has happened to his wife. He knew that she said that she was going to go down to these stones to visit them. But, no one there's no evidence of, her being kidnapped. There was no struggle. There's just a car sitting there, and she's gone. So the police officers and everyone is telling him, just get over it. She probably done left you for another man. We can't say that, there's been a struggle. There's no struggle. There's no sign that she's really been kidnapped. She probably just took off and left him. And when she gets to the other side, and this story has a lot of historical facts about the British and the fight between, the British with the redcoats at that time back in the like the 18th century. And it is such an interesting story, because if you ever think about like really being taken back in time, and then she gets to actually meet his ancestors, because she had already had some understanding about Frank Randall's ancestors, that he had an ancestor named Jack Randall who was a British redcoat. And then the war is over, and they're all happy that the war is over. And they were celebrating. And after the war, the work to really settle down, he gets a job working as a historian. And they go have a friend who has a home out there near where he's going to work. And the guy is a great historian himself. He has a library. He's also, I think, a minister. And, they're talking to him about all the historical things that actually happened in that time. And when you listen to the whole entire series, it just takes you through so much. It's so deep, how she goes back in time and she learns so much about the history of her ancestors as well as his. And she gets to see two different sides because she falls in love with another man who is Irish, and he saves her life. Hold on, you guys. So, and the guy she falls in love with, he's a Scot, and this is back in the 1740s. The two wars in the 1740s, which Claire has seen. She goes to this place called the Standing Stones. That's what it was called. And she meets this guy, and they're named Jamie, and he is a Scot. And in Scotland, there's lords and lords and everything. And when she first gets taken back into the stone, she only has on her little nightgown. And the first person she sees is this guy in a red coat. And the guy in the red coat, she has no idea where she's at. And when the guy in the red coat comes towards her, the crazy thing is, he looks just like her husband, Frank. But he is mean. He is evil. He looks at her and asks her, like, what are you doing out here? And instead of like helping her, he sees her in her nightgown and he tries to attack her. So he's like trying to rape her. And comes to her rescue is the Scots. And they are the Mackenzies. They are Jamie's kinfolks, the guy she falls in love with. And they save her from this guy named Jack Randall. Now, at the time, she did not know this man name was Jack Randall, who she had already read about and knew of because her husband, being a historian teacher, and was going to be going to Oxford to be a professor, teaching historian. She had already read about him when she was on the other side. And she looked at him and she was kind of like stumbled, like, that, I knew that was not Frank. You know, this guy was dressed in a red coat. She recognized she was in a different time. So after they saved her, they put her on a horse. The Mackenzies, you know, they all dressed in their little Scot uniforms. And they take her back. And she gets to realize where she's at, who they are. They're the Mackenzie clan, that they saved her. And she had not yet met Jamie at the time. She meets Dougal, who is Jamie's uncle. And she realizes that she is not where she was. She is really trying to process it. They get her washed up. She meets the ladies who are the ones who are taking care of the kitchen. And she's just like trying to process in her mind how in the world that I just transport between time. She still has on her wedding ring, and they gave her clothes and bathed her, and they're treating her like really nice. She sees Jamie and everything, and at the time they had no like love for each other, of course, because they didn't know each other. But this is the guy that she ends up falling in love with on the side. The crazy thing about it that she really falls in love with the guy named Jamie on the other side. And the guy who is actually a demon. I mean, this guy, Jack Randall, is a devil. He has no love. He is evil, but he looks just like her husband, Frank. He is her husband, Frank's ancestor. She meets another woman who is there. They call, who is the herbalist. And this is the picture that I'm drawing. Her name is Gillias Duncan. And I like this page because I'm into herbalism. I'm into, you know, natural health and wellness. And Gillias is an herbalist herself. And Claire, being in the medical field, she's in a total different atmosphere. She is now in the 1700th century. She knows a whole lot more than most people would in the medical industry. So when someone gets sick, she knows what to do, and since she knows things that they don't know. And it's like, so they say, oh, she's a healer. Or some people would also, you have to be careful because they would also claim women as being into witchcraft. And when she meets Gilead kind of tests her knowledge and tries to see, if you can use different things to put warts on your face, or you can use a frog to get rid of warts, or she's like, okay, yeah, that's a bunch of hogwash. But she was testing her to see if she was into witchcraft or she was really into herbs for healing, because there were people who used herbs and then used other things and potions and believed in changing people into frogs and stuff like that. And they called those people that were witches who believed in potions. So this whole entire series is really deep, because when you realize she has fallen in love with one man and left another man behind, but the man that she left behind looks like the man who is actually who ancestor who is actually such a demon and has is the enemy of the man that she has fallen in love with on the other side. This man, Jack Randall, who is her husband's ancestor, y'all, he is a demon itself. And I mean, when I say he is a demon, I mean he is a demon. And when she finds out what he did to her husband, the guy that she falls in love with named Jamie Frazier, who is part of the Mackenzie clan, and he's one of the he is one of the Scots there, and on the other side he's the one she falls in love with and ends up marrying, because her and this girl right here, who I am coloring, named Gilead, end up being, they being accused of witchcraft because she was trying to help Gilead out. And Gilead fell in love with Dougal, and Dougal ended up getting her pregnant. And it's a whole shenanigans. And they tried to, accuse Gilead of witchcraft, and she tried to warn her. And the girl who did not like that Jamie fell in love with Claire got jealous and tried to set them up and accuse them of witchcraft. And the girl was real evil because she was just that jealous that she did not want Jamie to be with Claire, because she wanted Jamie for herself. But Jamie never really fell in love with her. He fell in love with Claire. He didn't really care for her like that. And she knew that Gillis was a herbalist, and she ended up finding a way to actually set them up and accuse them of being set up for witchcraft. And she ends up getting set free, but Gilead dies. They end up killing her while she was pregnant. She risked her life to save Claire's. And it's just crazy. It's a whole lot that goes on in the series. I'm only on series 2. This series is still going on. There is a season 6. It's been out since 2014. And she ends up, I'm in season 2, where she actually gets taken back through the stones to the time where she came from, which is in World War II of 1940. So she goes back through the stones, and Frank finally gets to see her again. And I'm all shook up. I'm like, oh my God. Now after she done married Jamie, she got pregnant by Jamie. Pregnant by Jamie once, they lost their child. Now she got pregnant by Jamie again. And she done went back through the stones. Now I'm on a part because they ain't got to the part to show you why she actually had to go back through the stones again. So I'm like, oh my God, they got me all on pins and needles. Now, when I watch a story, I'll be like, I can't sit here and watch all the episodes, like all 10 of them in one day. I don't do that kind of binge watching. I got like, okay, I need a breather. I don't watch 3 to 4 episodes back to back. Okay, I need a breather. I'll watch this another 3 to 4 days later. I can't sit there and just watch 10 episodes, be binge watching all weekend. I don't do that. So if I binge watch something, I watch 3 episodes back to back, 4 episodes back to back, then I need a breather. I take 3 to 4 days later, I watch it again. That's how I do things. So, and this is the girl, Gillias Duncan, who they also called a witch, but she was a herbalist too. The one that Claire met on the other side, that actually died. They actually killed her. She actually gave up her life to save Claire's. And Claire realized that she was from the other side because just before they died, because they were put on trial, and the girl who fell in love with Jamie, because Jamie had to go away at that time because he was, I forgot what he had to actually go away for. They had sent him away to go do something, but he wasn't there at the time. But he told her, he warned Claire, and Claire don't like to listen. And one time, he not knowing that, he's from Scotland. This is back in the 1800s, and they had just got married. And when she didn't listen the first time, he's like, okay, that means if you don't listen, because she put all his men at risk by not listening and come. I think he told her to stay there, not to move. And when she came out, they had to save her from something, and it put all them in danger. And he was like, okay, well, and the guys looked at her like, you know what that means? She's like, she was so sorry she did it. But he's like, well, I know that you're sorry, but that means I gotta punish you. So he takes off his belt. It was like he was ready to give her a whooping. And she was like, I know you guys to be out your mind. He was like, well, look, it's not, if it was just me you put in danger, that's one thing. But you put all the men in danger, so I gotta whip you. So she was not down with that. And she was from the 1940s. But after that first time, he apologized to her that he would never do that again. That he would not, he would not use the ways of his people to, in their marriage. He wouldn't do that because his father did it, his kinfolk did it. He said, we won't use the ways of my people in our marriage to do things the right way, to do things that way. But she has to start listening. And one of the things that she didn't do when Jamie left, he told her, do not go out there to Gillias Duncan's house, because he knew that she was pregnant with his uncle's child, and he knew that there were people who were, keeping their eyes on her because of rumors. But Claire was trying to warn her about people because she was a friend, and she considered Gillias a friend, and she didn't want to leave Gillias in the dark. But Gillias didn't act like she was like afraid. She's like, I'm not afraid. I know that Dougal ain't gonna let nothing happen to me. He loves me. He's not gonna let. And he was a lord. He was a someone that was a leader and a person that was really in charge. And him and Jamie were going at the time, and the girl that was in love with Jamie was mad that Claire was with him. She the one that set him up. And they arrested them both for witchcraft, and they went to trial, and Jamie was not there, nor was Dougal to save them. And when it came time, Claire said that she was the one, not Claire, Gilead said that she was the one doing witchcraft. She had bewitched Claire. Claire had no idea that she was under a spell. And she pulled off her shirt and showed this mark that she had on her arm, and said, this is my mark that I have of the devil. The mark that she had on her arm was the vaccination that a lot of people got in the 1960s on their arm for polio or chicken pox. And my mother even has one on her arm. But back then, in of course, the 8 to 1740s, no one knew about that mark. No one had that mark. And that's when Claire, she had that same mark too, but nobody knew she had it. But that's what Gilead did. She risked her life and the life of her child because she was pregnant with Dougal's child. And she said, I serve the devil, I have his mark. And she showed them that mark on her arm, and that's when Claire realized she was from the future too. And that was so sad, and it was crazy because she died, and they hung her and burnt her they burnt her at the stake. Oh, it was just crazy. And that's when Jamie saved her, and she had to tell Jamie the truth about who she really was. and how she came about. So Jamie listened to her entire story of how she came through the stones and that her husband's name was Frank, and he believed her. And he couldn't believe, I mean, he was like, he truly believed everything she said. So like I said, I'm in season 2 now, where she's back home, and when she's walking down the road, someone sees her in this Scottish dress, which is a long 1700s Scottish dress, where it's long and it's really well made. So she ain't, it's nothing that's messed up. We say, oh, that's something that's been dusty or messed up for some while. And it was just kind of crazy. And when they sent her, get her in a car, they put her in some kind of like institution because they think she crazy, and she's like got this old Scottish dress on, and they take her and she talks about Frank Randall, who she was married to. He comes to see her and gets her out of the institution, and you know he said he don't care where she was. He don't care. He just glad that she's alive. He wants her back in his life, and she realizes that she's back where she was, where she started back in the 1940s. But at the same time, she is madly still in love with Jamie, and she's carrying Jamie's child. And it's crazy because now the show goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with showing you how she got back to 1940, and it's showing you what happened before she even got into the 1940. How did she get back in time? And it's taking you what happened with her and Jamie before she went through the stones. And one thing that Jamie told her, if anything ever happens to me at any time, you promise me that you'll go back through the stones to Frank. And I remember him saying that. So now it's just taking you back of what happened before she went back to the stones to Frank into the 1940s, because when she goes back into the stones, even though she sees Frank, her first love, she is still madly in love with Jamie. But Frank makes her promise that he said that he will take care of her and the child in her womb, because he realized that he could not give her children. She thought it was her that couldn't have children, but it was actually Frank that couldn't give her children. And she was kind of mad when she said that she was pregnant with Jamie. He was like, he balled up his hand, like he started acting like Jack Randall, like he was about to hit his sister. And she got real scared. And he stopped himself from hitting her and walked out the room. She's like, I'm with child. And he was real happy, like thinking like, oh, it's mine. But then she's like, no, it's Jamie's. And he got mad when she said that, like he was ready to hit his sister. He was ready to ball up his fist and beat the heck out of her. Then he walked out the room, and she started to cry because she got scared, because she saw his ancestor in him. She saw not Frank Randall, she saw Jack Randall, who was a demon. That man was so evil. I mean, y'all watch this show, and I'm telling you, it is a good show to watch. So please, if you tune in the Outlander on Netflix. It's a good show to watch. It is very good to watch. It is awesome. Yeah. He is the demon. Jack Randall, his ancestor was a demon. He was a red coat. He worked for the British. He was a dragon of the dragon army. That means you had to be a really good swordsman to actually even have that title. But he is a demon. This man is, Jamie and him met because he accused Jamie of doing something he did not do, which was actually he accused Jamie of murdering, and Jamie was not guilty of murder, number one. And he knew that, but he wanted Jamie to take the fall. And he actually beat Jamie, whipped him like they did Christ, like whipped you with a whip on your back in front of a crowd of people. And when I tell you he whipped him until you would see nothing but the bone. I mean, the bone. And it was ugly. And Jamie didn't, he made noises, but you didn't hear him scream. And he said that he was creating a masterpiece on his back. And the guy was whipping him so hard, he got tired himself. And he liked the fact that Jamie was so strong that he didn't, that he couldn't even whip him no more because he was tired. And Jamie didn't die, of course, but he hated Randall. He hated Randall, with a passion. And if he had a chance, he would kill him. And Claire actually met Randall again and realized that, this was the man that tried to rape her when she first came through the stones. And when the people knew that, when the guys who met her were redcoats and they knew that she was British too, they treated her more, with respect. But Randall ended up showing up. Man, there's so much that go on in this total series, and there's so much historical details in this series because they talk about Prince Bonnie Charles Stuart, who is actually a part of the royal family, and where he how they actually won over, the war back in that era, and what he actually went through. He tried to please his father, who was King Charles at the time, King Charles the something. But Prince Bonnie, what's his name? Prince Bonnie Charles Stuart. I think that's what's his name. His father was the king. He was the prince. But, he ran the army. And there's a lot of historical facts of how that war actually really took place. And Prince Bonnie at that time with the Scots and how things really happened. So, though the story itself is not a true story, there are historical facts that were put into the story, and how the redcoats were, and the things that actually happened in that era with the redcoats, and how things took. And that's what I like about it, is that it's so much historical stuff. Those stones, they're called the standing stones, are not stones that are actually in Scotland, but there are stones that are similar to that all over the earth. I mean, there's some stones like the Stonehenge that are known to have mystical, they call it mystical powers, or have mystical, legend tales about them. So, yeah, a lot of people like those stories that are told about, like the Stonehenge. So that's the kind of stones they were that she passed through. And it's really an interesting story because there is like so much history that goes into the story itself. And her being such a good nurse, she had the ability to help so many people. But it also shows you how much has changed with time when it comes to the medical field and the things they had to do back then just to help men survive, or how they would actually taste the urine to see. I mean, to say somebody tasted urine, that's just like, but yeah, they would do things that you would never even think or imagine that people would do in the medical field to help people, or to figure out, what was going on in their bodies, or, how they would listen to see if someone was, miscarrying a baby. It's just like just the changing of the different things that are so crazy in the medical field itself, and the way women were accused of different things, especially if you had a lot of knowledge like some of these women did about herbs and healing, and they didn't depend on doctors. They believed in leaning towards nature and using natural remedies for things. And that's me. I love natural remedies. I'm all about that. And they would call them witches because they had understanding of things in the earth that, these doctors and stuff didn't like, because they weren't going to do what they told them to do. They would do what, they felt was right by using natural stuff, by, mixing up some natural concoctions and things like that. So, yes, this Outlander series is really interesting, y'all. So if you get a chance, you really got to tune into it. And if you want to start watching it with me, I'm just on season 2. Or if you already have started watching it, please put it in the comments. Let me know. I love the show. It is really interesting. They have a season 6 coming out in January of 2022. And I know it's going to be the bomb. I don't even want to know what's going on in season 6 of 2022. I'm not even going to look into it to see what's going on. Or I see that Claire and Jamie got back together, but I was like, I don't even know how that happened, because I need to watch all the other seasons. I don't even want to know. I'm gonna have to catch up. But yeah, because I know, I was like, they had a love. You thought that her love with Frank was like so true, and just like they were just the meant to be couple. They were both in the war. They were both dedicated to each other, and they had like an untouchable love. And then here comes something that happens that's just like, okay, why is this happening now? And she ends up falling in love with Jamie on the other side, and his love for her her love with him is even more deeper and stronger than it was with Frank. So who knew? Just by going back in time. So yes, that's just my little chat and coloring video for today. Just wanted to give you guys a little brief. I love this book. This is has a lot of interesting pictures. This is just the one I chose to do. I started off doing the very first page, which shows you Claire. And if you want to check out the series, like I said, go ahead and check it out. This is Gazelle Duncan, the woman she met, who was an herbalist like she was. And yeah, it's a really interesting movie to watch. That's Jamie. He loved horses. He was also someone that took care of horses. That was the Lord himself, one of his uncles, who was head of the Mackenzie clan, and the Scots. There's another picture of Claire when she was in the garden. That's another picture of her. That's just a picture of the scenery of the castle where she stayed. That's her when she met Jamie and she was binding up his wounds. Okay. There go the Mackenzie clan. They were high, they call them Highlanders. And their kilts and stuff like that. And there's Jack Randall. I am Madame Jonathan Randall, Captain of Majesty 8th Dragons, at your service. And he was the one that tried to rape her. He is evil. He was a devil, the devil himself. And there's the other group of redcoats. This is the car from the 1940s. This car in that movie is awesome. I love cars from the 1940s. 1930s. It's burgundy. It's awesome. I'll do that later on. And these are the stones that she actually passed through. Before she passed through them, there was these women that were doing a little dance around the stones. So, yeah. And that's like the little Scottish thing with the candle. That is Frank Randall in the 1940s. And there's their little symbol. It said, we've been tracing your husband's ancestor, Jack Randall, through the Army dispatchers of the period. And there is the first part in this. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. If you liked this little whip and chat about the series, The Outlander, please subscribe and do like and comment if you've seen the seen the series before, or if you want to check it out. And thank you so much for tuning in, and you guys have a blessed one, and I'll see you again in my next video. All right, bye bye.